What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, which has popped its way off the low, sitting at 116,700 as I record right now. Of course, bouncing right off of those highs from back there in May, humming along as one would hope. XRP has scooted its way back up to $3.06, while Ethereum has pushed its way back up to $3,860. Sitting at 38.40 right now as I'm recording, right back near these highs of 39.38 that were set just a couple of weeks ago, still trying to push on the multi-year highs dating back to 2021. So this video will actually be just kind of a really quick update on where we're at right now. I feel like we're in one of those moments in the market where I'm just kind of repeating myself on what we're seeing happening in here for Bitcoin and for the altcoin market. Strongly debated whether or not to put something out and whether or not we're going with quality or quantity of videos in here. So we'll keep this just really brief on where we're at. We're kind of in like a boring phase of the market right now. The first thing we wanted to see is that there would be a ricochet off those levels, which is great. Yesterday in markets in the morning, we were talking about waiting for some type of confirmation for it to be able to bounce off of those lows and work its way out, which is what we got here this morning. But even if this is an ABC correction that we were hoping to see show up in here, there can still be an unbelievable amount of chop that can happen throughout here until we actually flag and then go for a breakout. Very difficult to know how price action can get back in there. You could see in here just how this all slopped itself until finally it got in there. I mean, you could just keep doing things like this until you get there. So sitting here and saying, hey, this move right here definitively means we're good to go. We're going to rock. It could still be a process to work its way out in here to get over. So I think that's kind of where my hang up is on recording today, to say, hey, this is great. Good. We got to bounce off of those lows. It perfectly nailed where we wanted it to nail, and it ricocheted off of there. That's great. But of course, we still sit in a ranging context and we want to get to breakout context, right? And without something actually showing up and being like, well, okay, well, here's a first like level in here to be like, well, we're back into retraces. We could sit here and say, well, now we're going to find out if we can break out from these retraces. Instead, it's kind of like, all right, well, we've ricocheted off the lows. We can take a lot of different forms to get here, but then we would have something to talk about when we got back up in here. So right now, as we sit here in what we call the dumb money zone, it's still just a ranging context until we can get back up into the upper bound of the range. Then we can start seeing, do we see breakout things starting to happen in here? I would say that it's intriguing to see what's happening over here with Ethereum, and that Ethereum has gotten above all retraces on this shorter time frame. But of course, we have to go back out, and we know that we're still battling the much bigger time frames in here. And so I think really what we all care about more than anything than like, hey, this is great. We're shifting up into a little range and we're scooting our way up, and that's great. I think we're all here wanting to see breakouts happening throughout the market. And that, of course, goes for things like XRP as well. And so while it sits right here, the things that I'm waiting for on XRP would be actually just a shift back up to the top of the range. Even if it did happen and we got back to the top of the range, I would still think we would actually pull back from the top of that range. So we could get as high as like 370 and then probably pull back to 325, 330. But seeing that actually show up in there would be really optimistic that we're probably gearing up for a breakout to take place later. And I've shown that in other examples in here as well, that just shifting back to the top of the range still could be a big pullback that happens in there, but would lead to a breakout afterwards. And of course, I think that breakout would happen. I'll clean this up. There we go. Once we could actually get into a flag and bust out in here for Bitcoin. I do know that's not everybody's favorite thing to hear when we say, hey, Bitcoin is going to be the reason why XRP is going to actually end up busting out. But you have 13 years of price history to show that it is what actually matters when price does bust out for the XRP price chart. So, there's still a couple of phases we're working on here while we're in this ranging context. I would just say, the big thing that has happened so far is the bounce, right? I tweeted back on July 11th. My best guesstimate at this point is some kind of back test eventually arrives for Bitcoin. Then the euphoric parabola happens. How the altcoins react during that pullback is a little bit of a mystery, or if they'll keep running for now till that. But parabola fun, the idea, getting back into these areas into a back test. So far, that's what we've proven in here. But just because we get there, there's still work to do to actually bust out in here, and then for the market to start expanding again and breadth to open wide up all over again and things to get exciting in the market. Again, I still believe this is going to be the altcoin show for the remainder of this cycle. The Bitcoin dominance nailed its 786 Fibonacci retracement level. You can see in here, totally a difference happening over here on the relative strength index. on the change in trend and strength of the Bitcoin dominance with that move versus the ones that have happened all along here. You can even see over here on the monthly time frame, this whole grind up that happens in here, how the monthly stochastic RSI is up, right? We have our big move that happens there in November and December and January in the altcoin market. Bitcoin goes back and takes it a little bit. Now you can see the stochastic on the monthly time frame for Bitcoin. It's pointed straight down. You can look over here on the MACD as well. Notice all of this in here for the MACD, all occurring here in this climb back to the last retracement level. You can see we're about to get across over here on the MACD on the monthly time frame. It's highly likely that we're actually going to see this thing flip red by the time August is over. If not, then by September, we're going to see this thing flip red on here on the Bitcoin dominance, but we're still waiting on that. You can see while this may be a little bit difficult to see this yellow line in here, it's essentially the moving average or a 14-day moving average. And in this case, since we're looking at it on the monthly time frame, a 14-month moving average of what the relative strength has been. And this is the first breakdown in the relative strength below the actual monthly moving average of the relative strength for the Bitcoin dominance. So really just on all three of these indicators, you have things that are of interest where you have the MACD getting ready to flip, you have the stochastic RSI crashing, you have the relative strength index dropping below, and then you even see that on the daily time frame after hitting a technical retrace level that this gets put on here of the most weakness, yet price still sits way up in here. So I do think that it's going to be the altcoin market that's going to be the show-stopping event for the remainder of the cycle, but we're still in like this wait moment. So the messaging I come to bring to you today is, hey, that's great to see that happening in there, but there's still going to be some work that has to happen over here in Bitcoin and in the altcoin market. While there's a nice little pop over there on Ethereum, we can see that there's still this level to have to break out from in here. We're trying to buck up against this major event happening over here, this major resistance, this major level. And while, of course, I'm thrilled to see prices bounce from that level, it's still probably going to be a little bit of a washing machine in here for a minute until we can get to a point where we see like confluence of breakouts getting ready to happen. So my gut tells me it's going to take a little bit of patience in here. And I think that's right, because even here, just while I've been recording, now we're back to 115,800 in here, back testing in here. It could just be kind of that kind of range break, range break kind of stuff happening in here. So we'll give it some patience, but I wanted to also show big picture perspective, right? We see all the underlying indicators showing this thing reversing in strength for the Bitcoin dominance while also hitting a technical level. We're just kind of sitting here waiting for this to let go of itself and get moving. And my gut tells me that it's probably going to happen once we can get back up into these retracements, probably range under them for a little while. And then once that breakout happens in there and we start really building that parabola, that's where things get real nutty in the market. And until then, we're in that ranging context, the dumb money zone, having to grind until we can get there and then get that. I think it'll be a really exciting time in the market once we get to it. And that's my big picture perspective of just where we are. It's just in this range. It could be grindy right in here as we're working our way back up. Everybody's, of course, locked into small time frames right now, wanting to see things move really quick. I know how this market gets when we start getting exciting. Everybody's like, hey, today. I think, looking out ahead, I think, once this thing breaks out, we're probably in the last 30 days of the market once this thing does actually end up breaking out, and probably the most exciting 30 days that we've seen in over 4 years. But it's a process to get back there. And right now we're just working on it. And a lot of times when you get back to those retracements, it is kind of that stair-stepping stuff happening. The good news is we bounced right off of 112. We back tested the May highs. Nothing surprising happening in there. XRP is above $3. Now we're trying to get the true breakout, the parabola, the exciting, the ridiculousness of the market. And that's probably also where Ethereum is going to bust out above $4,000 at the same time, and the whole market's going to rock. So I think we'll get there. Just as for saying something different today in a YouTube video compared to what we've been saying for the last couple of weeks, there's not a whole lot different to say, just to kind of reiterate these things of like, hey, we've bounced, we're grinding, the Bitcoin dominance looks super weak. Here's how I can imagine what XRP could look like. And until then, we're still just having to wait for ourselves to get back to the retracements on Bitcoin. And then once we get back there, then we're looking for actual breakouts. So till then, just kind of enjoying our time here and our last month of summer here in the United States. And as things continue to develop here on the charts, I do think August in itself will be a very exciting month, and especially September. So as for today, August 7th or August 8th, we're just in a grind. But I think, when we get to the end of the month and we get into September, we'll be forgetting about this range very quickly. So, all right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope that you're all doing well. I put out a video because I haven't put out one since Monday, and I didn't want to wait until Friday to put one out. I figured I'd give you an idea on what I'm looking at and hearing and my thoughts just of what I see in the range. So, all right, I'll check in with you guys soon. You guys can check out the newsletter over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. I put out 2 of these every month. After I write them, I do record them. This most recent one has a 24-minute audio recording in here. You can, of course, check out bcbacker.com, which has over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. There are links within the descriptions of each of my videos to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com and to bcbacker.com. Otherwise, have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll check in with you soon. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.